It was the kind of New York cold that made steam curl from sewer grates like ghosts. On 147th and Lexington, beside the granite steps of the Bronx County Courthouse, a battered hot dog cart hissed to life. The woman behind it wore 2 sweaters under her puffy coat, fingers gloved but still red. Her name was Rosa Alvarez, and the courthouse guards knew her face, but not her story. She had been standing at that corner since her son was 3. Every weekday, from 6:30 a.m. until the courthouse doors locked at night, she sold dogs, sodas, and coffee to attorneys who never looked her in the eye, to paralegals in pencil skirts, to defendants pacing outside in sagging jeans and ankle monitors. She had a system. Boil first batch by 7, refill mustard by 9, give Officer Callahan the usual with no onions. Never speak unless spoken to. Never take up space. But what they didn't know, what nobody knew, was that every lunch break she sat behind the cart with a spiral notebook on her lap, reading criminal procedure and constitutional law from free PDFs she downloaded in Spanish and translated word by word. She carried a second-hand tablet with a cracked screen and a battery pack she charged at a laundromat. And at night, when she closed shop, she'd take the long walk home to her 1-bedroom in Kingsbridge, heat up arroz con pollo, and sit with her son Mateo doing flashcards until they both passed out at the kitchen table. They didn't know that her husband, who once promised they'd make it in America together, had left 3 months after the pregnancy test came back positive. Or that the reason she picked this corner, this courthouse, wasn't random. It was the same place where her cousin Luis was wrongfully sentenced years ago, a conviction that shattered her family and quietly rewired her destiny. Rosa never said it out loud, but she was studying to become the lawyer no one in her family ever had. And then came the warning. It was a Tuesday, rainy, foot traffic slow. Rosa had just handed a hot dog to a woman in scrubs when a voice behind her said, "Hey, you, no vending on city property." She turned. A young officer in a fresh uniform, probably 2 years out of the academy, stood with a clipboard. His name tag said Marsh. "I have permit," Rosa said, lifting the laminated card from her neck. "That's for sidewalks, not courthouses." He smirked. "You've been warned. But I always, same spot, for years. Not anymore," he said. "Next time it's a fine. Then impound, you understand me?" She nodded, swallowing hard. The cart had been a gift from her uncle. It was old, but it worked. Without it, she didn't make rent. Without it, Mateo didn't eat. That night, she barely spoke during dinner. Mateo noticed. He always did. "Mummy, what's wrong?" "Nothing, mijo. Just tired." He chewed in silence for a moment, then said softly, "You know more law than the people on TV, Mummy. Maybe one day you won't need that cart." Rosa smiled, brushing his curls from his forehead. "Maybe one day," she whispered, "but not yet." What she didn't know was that the next morning, Officer Marsh would return, and this time he wouldn't come alone. The next morning brought clear skies, sharp wind, and dread in Rosa's chest. She bundled up tighter than usual, double-knotted Mateo's shoelaces, kissed his forehead, and walked the familiar stretch to the courthouse corner with a prayer on her breath. Maybe Marsh wouldn't show. Maybe yesterday was just rookie posturing. She had barely unlatched the propane tank when she saw them, 2 officers, not one, walking straight toward her cart like it had a target painted on it. Marsh was in front, puffed up like a rooster, clipboard in one hand, the other gripping a folded orange sticker. "Miss Alvarez," he said like a headline, "I gave you a lawful warning." The older officer with him said nothing. Just looked at Rosa's cart with mild disapproval, like it was a shopping cart someone left in a church parking lot. "I have permit," she said again, holding it up, the lanyard trembling in her fingers. "And I told you, it's invalid for this specific property line, courthouse jurisdiction." City Rule 13C, look it up. I can move to sidewalk. Nope. Can't vend anywhere within 200 feet of the courthouse entrance. You've been here too long and complaints came in. I have to follow procedure. Complaints? Rosa blinked. From who? He shrugged. That's not your concern. Then, in a single motion, he slapped the sticker on the side of the cart. Notice of violation. Unauthorized vending. Subject to impound. Rosa's chest clenched. Please, she said. This cart feeds my son. You'll have to reclaim it through city storage. Directions are here. He handed her a pink sheet like it was a party flyer. Next time, follow the law. And just like that, they unhooked her propane tank and wheeled the cart away, its rusty wheels squeaking down the curb like a funeral procession. Rosa didn't move, not when people slowed to watch, not when the court clerks passed with their lattes, not even when a teenage defendant with an ankle bracelet looked at her and whispered, "That ain't right." She stood there, gloves still, on like a ghost in broad daylight. That night Rosa stayed up late, not working, reading, not PDFs this time, but city ordinances. She borrowed 3 law books from the Harlem branch library, printed out pages from the municipal code database, sat in bed with highlighters and post-it notes until her fingers cramped, because here was the thing, she had followed the law. There was a grandfather clause in a 2014 vending permit ruling. Vendors who operated within the same radius for more than 5 consecutive years, documented, were exempt from relocation unless obstructing public traffic or creating a hazard. Rosa had been on that corner since 2015. She had records, photos, even tax forms. What she didn't have was anyone to listen, until the phone rang. It was Lucia, her cousin from Queens, the one who used to braid Rosa's hair during high school, before Luis got locked up and everything fractured. "You sound out of breath," Lucia said. "They took it." "Took what?" "The cart. Said I couldn't sell by the courthouse anymore." Lucia was quiet for a beat, then, "That's not legal. You need to fight this." "I'm trying. But who do I even talk to?" "I'm not a lawyer." Lucia didn't hesitate. "No, but you will be. And in the meantime, you should meet someone." "Who?" "My friend Anna. She runs a community law clinic in Jackson Heights. I'll text you her number. She helps people like us." Rosa stared at her cracked tablet screen blinking hard. "I don't want charity," she said quietly. "It's not charity. It's justice." The next morning, Rosa walked the courthouse block with no cart and no coffee cups, just a satchel slung over her shoulder and a folder of city ordinances clutched like a shield. She wasn't selling anything today. She was taking notes, watching who came and went, timing security patrols, and waiting for the next person who thought she wouldn't fight back. Because Rosa Alvarez was no longer just the hot dog lady. She was a plaintiff in the making. The next Monday, Rosa stood outside a narrow office building in Jackson Heights, a neighborhood pulsing with vendors, kids in backpacks, music spilling from bodegas, and old men playing dominoes beside churro stands. She felt at home here, but also nervous, like she was walking into a place meant for people smarter, louder, more qualified. The sign above the awning read, "Queens Justice Network, Community Legal Aid and Advocacy." She stepped inside, clutching her folder of notes like a lifeline. The waiting room was small and worn. A fan buzzed in the corner. The receptionist looked up, kind-eyed, dark curls piled into a twist. "Can I help you?" "I have appointment with Anna?" The receptionist smiled. "You're Rosa. She's finishing up. Take a seat." Rosa sat beside a rack of flyers, eviction help, immigration updates, tenant rights. The walls had framed photos of rallies, marches, faces of people who probably came here scared just like her. When the door opened, a woman in jeans and a blazer stepped out, holding a clipboard. She couldn't have been much older than Rosa. Confident stride, no makeup, chipped nail polish, but her eyes were sharp and kind, the kind that saw through people, not past them. "You're Rosa?" she asked. Rosa stood. "Yes." "Ana Delgado. Come in." Inside Anna's office, Rosa laid everything out. Permits, printed municipal codes, her calendar logs, photos from over the years, one with Officer Callahan joking over a coffee, one with Mateo bundled up beside the cart in winter. She spoke slowly, carefully, afraid she'd misspeak and ruin something, but Anna never rushed her, just listened. When Rosa finished, Anna leaned back and crossed her arms. "You're organized." "I try." "And you're right," Anna said. "The 2014 clause you referenced, still active. If you've been vending there that long, you're protected, unless they've proven you caused obstruction or risk. Which, based on these photos, they haven't. They say I got complaints. Let me guess, and no documentation, just verbal threats." Rosa nodded. Anna tapped her pen against the desk. "Sounds like they were hoping you'd just go quietly." "I almost did," Rosa said. "But my son, he told me not to." Anna smiled. "Smart kid." By Friday, Anna had drafted the formal complaint. Unlawful confiscation of property, violation of Vendor Protection Code paragraph 2.8b. It wasn't a full lawsuit yet, just a demand letter and a request for a hearing. But Rosa saw her name at the top of the document. Rosa Alvarez, complainant, and felt something shift. For the first time in her life, her name wasn't just on receipts and rent stubs. It was on legal paperwork, not as a witness, not as a victim, but as a challenger, and she was just getting started. The court date came 2 weeks later. Small hearing in a downtown municipal building. Rosa wore the nicest thing she owned, a charcoal grey sweater, black slacks, Mateo's lucky necklace hidden under her collar. Hannah walked beside her, briefcase in hand, calm as stone. Inside, Officer Marsh was seated across the room, flanked by a city compliance rep who didn't even look up when Rosa entered. Marsh was scrolling on his phone. The judge was a thin, silver-haired woman with wireframe glasses and a no-nonsense tone. After opening statements, Anna laid everything out. Dates, maps, permit history, precedent, Rosa's tax filings. Photos with courthouse employees clearly showing the cart in that same spot year after year. When it was Marsh's turn, he cleared his throat, shrugged, and said, "There were complaints. That's all I know." "Do you have the names of those complainants?" the judge asked. He paused. "No, ma'am." "Do you have written documentation of the warnings issued to Miss Alvarez?" Another pause. "Not on file." Anna didn't even need to object. The judge raised an eyebrow and scribbled something down. When it ended, the judge said she'd issue a ruling by mail, but Anna leaned over and whispered she already made up her mind. That night, Rosa walked past the courthouse again. No cart, no apron. Just a woman in a sweater, head held a little higher than the week before. She paused where the cart used to be, her hand brushing the cold steel of the stair rail. From behind her, a voice called out, "Hot dog lady," she turned. It was the teenage boy from weeks earlier, the one with the ankle bracelet. He grinned, holding a Dunkin' bag. "You fighting back or what?" She smiled. "I am," he nodded, impressed. "Respect." And then he saluted her. Half sincere, half playful, but it stayed with her, because for the first time, someone had seen her not as just the woman behind the cart, but as someone standing up. The envelope came on a Thursday, slipped through the mail slot just as Rosa was boiling rice for dinner. She recognized the seal right away, Municipal Code Enforcement Division. Her hands trembled as she opened it, Mateo watching from the table with a pencil tucked behind his ear and worry in his eyes. The letter was short. 5 lines. Decision. In favor of complainant, Ms. Rosa Alvarez. Order. Return of impounded property within 72 hours. Reinstatement of vending rights under Section 2.8b. Recommendation. No further obstruction unless cause documented. Case closed. She read it twice, 3 times. Her knees nearly gave out. Did you win? Mateo asked. Rosa looked up at him. This boy with his growing voice and his father's chin but her eyes, and nodded slowly. I won, he whooped, leaping out of his chair, nearly knocking the rice off the stove. You won, Mummy! They danced in the kitchen, arms flailing, flour smudged on his cheek from his school project, her tears falling quietly into his hair. Rosa had spent most of her life in the background, holding trays, pouring coffee, waiting politely for space to open. But not anymore. She made her own space. The next morning, Rosa went to the city storage yard in Queens with Anna's assistant and a borrowed U-Haul. Her cart was dusty, dinged and tagged with spray paint. Someone had written, "Street Rat," on the side in black marker. She didn't cry, she took a photo. Then she pulled out Mateo's old baby wipes, cleaned every surface, and got to work rehitching the propane system herself. Anna had offered to help find a different vending corner, somewhere less hostile, more welcoming. But Rosa declined. I want the same corner, she said. Same bricks, same steps. If I move, they win. Monday morning she returned. The sun hadn't fully risen yet, and the courthouse steps were still shadowed. But already, Rosa could feel the weight of the moment. Her wheels scraped gently against the curb as she pushed her cart into position. Some passers-by did double takes. Others stared. At 7:05 a.m. she lit the first burner. By 7:30, Officer Callahan approached, hat in. Hand, I saw the notice, he said gently, nodding toward the cart. Glad you're back, Rosa. Gracias, she said, adjusting the hot dog tongs. Behind him, a woman in a navy pantsuit stepped up with a $20 bill. You're the one who stood up to Marsh, right? She asked. Rosa hesitated. I guess I heard. Good on you. She took 2 coffees and a sausage roll. Keep the change. By 8:15 a.m., she had a line down the block. Court clerks, defendants, reporters. Even an assistant district attorney who sheepishly ordered 2 like old times. She worked with quiet grace, but there was something different now, in the way people looked at her. They didn't look past her. They looked to her. Around 10 a.m., Officer Marsh walked by. He didn't say anything, didn't even look at her, just quickened his step and disappeared into the glass doors. Rosa didn't flinch. She slid another hot dog into a bun and handed it to a teen with nervous hands and a court date. You got this, she told him gently, like she did with Mateo during spelling quizzes. Breathe. He nodded, clutching the foil-wrapped bun like a lifeline. That afternoon, Anna called. We've had 3 people ask if you're taking advocacy clients now. Rosa blinked. Clients? They heard your story. One woman wants help fighting a housing citation. A food vendor down in Brooklyn got fined too, but I'm not certified. Yet, Anna said. But if you want, we can help you. Get there. That night, Rosa didn't just read law textbooks. She applied to the City College's pre-law certificate program, and under the "Why do you want to pursue law?" section of the application, she wrote one sentence. Because I already know how to stand up. Now I want to stand for others. The week after her return to the courthouse corner, Rosa began to notice them. The lingerers, not the usual customers, not the clerks or the cops or the overworked public defenders grabbing coffee before court. No, these people came with different energy. They didn't have a courtroom to rush to or a docket to scan. They came with folded papers, hesitant footsteps and eyes that kept glancing at her face, like they were working up the courage to speak. By Wednesday, one finally did. He was a delivery driver in his early 50s, Dominican like Rosa, with oil-stained hands and eyes that had seen too many double shifts. He held a crumpled envelope in one hand and a Metra card in the other. "You're the lady," he said in Spanish. "The one who fought back." "I guess," she replied with a quiet smile. "You need something, senor?" "I got a code violation for vending without a license, but I have a license. They just said it was the wrong borough. I don't speak English that well, and they took my cart before I could explain." He looked down. "I just want my cart back." Rosa looked at the letter, then back at him. "Come after work," she said. "Bring every paper you have. I'll look." That night, she cleared the dining table, turned off the TV, and sat beside a stranger, with a dream not too different from her own. She translated the language of city bureaucracy line by line. She highlighted dates, circled inconsistencies. She pulled up a municipal map, found the borderline between the two boroughs, and traced it with her finger. "You were 2 feet inside Queens," she said, surprised. "Barely," he laughed bitterly. "And they impounded it like I was dealing drugs." "You have a case," she said, "but you'll need someone to say it in a room where they listen." "I can't afford a lawyer." "You don't need one," she said. "Not yet." She drafted a letter in his name, printed it at the library, showed him how to file it, walked him through the appeal form step by step. He returned the next week, smiling like a man 10 years younger. "They're returning it," he said. "No fine. Dismissed." Rosa nodded. "Good." He reached into his jacket and pressed a folded $20 bill into her hand. "I know you don't want charity, but this isn't charity, this is payment, senora, for your work." She looked down at the bill, then back at him. For a moment it didn't feel real. It wasn't just about the money. It was the recognition that someone saw her not just as helpful, but as capable. News started to ripple through the boroughs. Quiet at first. One woman told another. A father told a cousin. An elderly tamale vendor in Brooklyn called and asked if Rosa could help her with a noise complaint she didn't understand. By the end of the month, Rosa had a new nickname in the neighborhood, La Abogada del Pueblo, the people's lawyer. She wasn't certified yet, but she was already advocating, educating, translating, and empowering. One night, while reviewing documents late into the evening, Mateo came in with 2 cups of tea, one for him, one for her. He set them down, then said, "Do you ever wish you had a real office?" She looked around the small apartment, the stacks of paper on the ironing board, the law books piled by the microwave, the post-its lining the wall like wallpaper. "I have one," she said, sipping. "It's here, for now." He smiled. "But one day?" Rosa looked at her son, her partner in struggle, her silent witness. "One day," she whispered, "I'll hang my name on a door. And when people walk through it, they'll know someone's going to fight for them." That weekend, Anna called again. "I know you're busy, but would you consider speaking at a local vendor coalition meeting?" she asked. "Just 5 minutes, tell your story." "I don't know how to give speeches." "You don't have to," Anna said. "Just tell the truth, that's what they need." So Rosa went. She stood in front of a folding table in a rec center in East Harlem, her palms sweating, her voice small at first. But then she looked out and saw the faces, the ones like hers, women in aprons, men in delivery jackets, mothers with toddlers on their hips, and suddenly the words came, not polished, not rehearsed, but real. "I stood on the corner of 147th and Lexington for 7 years, and for most of that time people saw me as invisible, until one day someone decided I didn't belong there. So I fought back, not because I wanted trouble, but because if I didn't fight, they'd do it again to someone else." She paused. "I'm not a lawyer, not yet, but I'm learning, and I promise you this, they won't silence us if we speak together." When she finished, the room erupted into applause. A woman with tears in her eyes approached her after and said, "My daughter wants to study law, but she thought she had to be perfect. Now I'm going to tell her about you." That night, Rosa walked home in silence, but inside something had shifted again. She wasn't just back, she was rising, and this time she wasn't doing it alone. It was sometime past midnight when Rosa finally closed her last folder and leaned back in the old kitchen chair. Her eyes burned, but her heart buzzed. That night she had helped a food vendor decipher a cease and desist letter written in English, so dense it might as well have been in Latin. The woman, a widow from Bangladesh, had whispered, "Bless you," with such trembling gratitude it stayed in Rosa's chest like a song. Mateo had gone to bed hours earlier, or so she thought, until she saw the envelope slid under her cup. Her name was written in pencil, "To Mommy. Don't read until you're done helping the world." She opened it, and inside was a folded piece of lined notebook paper with a crude drawing of her pushing her hot dog cart like a superhero cape trailed behind her. Mateo's handwriting filled the page, messy but sincere. "Dear Mummy, I know you don't think of yourself as famous, but you kind of are. Everyone knows you now. Not because you yelled, but because you stood tall and because you never give up. I tell my friends that my mom is a lawyer already, even if the school doesn't know it yet. I tell them that my mom helps people who don't speak English, who don't know the rules, who are scared to walk into rooms where they don't belong. I tell them I'm going to be just like you, only I want to wear the tie. I love you. Your biggest fan, Mateo." Rosa read it 3 times, then once, more aloud, and cried not from pain this time but from something softer, something that reminded her she wasn't climbing this mountain for a diploma or a title, but for the boy who saw her as a giant, even when the world tried to make her feel small. She folded the letter and placed it in the front of her study, binder right next to her city permit. 2 weeks later she got the call. "Rosa," it was Anna, sounding breathless. "You remember Councilwoman Sanders, the one who spoke at the vendor rights event?" "Sigh, of course. She's nominating someone for the Bronx Civic Honor this year. Someone who's been a public advocate without official power. Someone who's made real change for working-class families and immigrant vendors." Rosa blinked. "And she wants to nominate you." There was a silence on the line. Rosa didn't know what to say. She looked down at her hands, dry, from steam burns and weather, still smelling faintly of onions and printer ink. "I'm not anybody special." "Yes," Anna said gently. "You are." The ceremony was modest, held in a city-run auditorium with folding chairs and paper programs. Rosa almost didn't go, too nervous about attention, too unsure about what she'd wear. Mateo insisted, digging her nicest blouse out of the closet and ironing it himself, even though he left 2 fresh scorch marks trying. The audience was full of neighborhood faces, clerks, vendors, grandmothers in floral head wraps, young women with babies on, hips, people she'd helped, people who now brought others to her table like a doctor making referrals. Councilwoman Sanders stepped to the podium. "Tonight," she said, "we honor someone who reminds this city that justice doesn't only wear a robe or carry a law degree. Sometimes justice stands behind a food cart, learns the codes no one bothers to translate, and teaches others how to defend themselves." When Rosa's name was called, there was a moment of stillness before the crowd rose. A standing ovation, not polite applause, but loud, teary, grateful noise. As she walked to the stage, someone handed her a bouquet of marigolds, her mother's favorite flower. Her voice trembled at first. "I came to this country with my son, a hot dog cart, and no idea how things worked," she said into the mic. "What I've learned is that power isn't always about money or connections. Sometimes it's just knowing the rules and refusing to be erased by them." She paused. "If you think you're too small to make change, remember this. I started with a vending permit and a notebook. And now I'm applying to law school. The audience erupted again. After the ceremony, Matteo squeezed her hand tight. You did it, Mammy, he whispered. You're the hero. She smiled at him, holding back tears. No, she said softly. We did, but deep down she knew the fight wasn't finished because the calls kept coming. The cases kept piling, and in the corner of her apartment, taped above her study desk, the drawing Matteo made of her. Cape flying, cart rolling, now hung like a vow. The people's lawyer was just getting started. It was a cold Thursday morning in late March, when Rosa stood in front of the tall glass doors of City University School of Law. Her fingers tugged at the cuffs of the blazer Anna lent her. Navy blue, a little tight in the shoulders, but more official-looking than anything Rosa owned. She had arrived early, too early. The admissions office hadn't even opened yet, but Rosa stood out front anyway, her folder clutched like armor. Inside were her transcripts from the pre-law certificate program, her community recommendation letters, and a one-page essay that had taken her 3 weeks to finish. The final sentence read, I learned the law not in a classroom, but on the sidewalk, and I'm ready to carry it into the courtroom. Her heart thumped like a drum in her ears. When the doors finally unlocked, Rosa was the first one in. The interviewer's name was Dean Matthews. He had kind eyes behind his thick glasses and a faint southern accent like honey over gravel. He welcomed her into a wood-paneled room with a wall of law books and a single framed photo of his graduating class from 1989. He gestured to the chair. Ms. Alvarez, he said, your application caught a lot of attention. Your letters were different. Different bad? She asked stiffly. He smiled. Different real. He flipped through the papers in front of him. Most applicants list internships, student government, debate clubs. You listed, filed my own administrative complaint against unlawful vendor treatment and won, and assisted 37 street vendors in navigating municipal code violations without charge. Rosa's voice was quiet. I don't have fancy, schools or honors, just the street corner and books from the library. He nodded. You included a photo of a hot dog cart. It's part of my story. Did you know, he said, that in my first year teaching here, a woman named Ms. Dorsey used to clean this building at night. She would collect the students' discarded flashcards and legal pads from the trash. I found out years later that she'd been studying them, in secret, for almost a decade. When we opened up our night track, she was the first to apply. Rosa's eyes widened. What happened to her? She passed the bar. Works in housing court now. Rosa felt the tiniest tremble in her chest, like something blooming. He leaned forward. Rosa, if we admitted you, you'd be our oldest first-year student. A single mom. No undergrad degree, just a certificate and community. Work. You'd have to fight harder than most. I know, she said, her voice steady now, but I've already fought harder than most just to get here. He tapped his pen. Why law? Because the law hurt people I love, she said. Because too many of us walk into rooms where the rules are written in a language we can't read. Because justice shouldn't belong only to those who can afford it. And because when I stand up, others see they can too. For a moment the room was still. Then he smiled, folded his hands, and said, You know what I see when I look at you? Rosa waited. Not just a student. I see the future of this profession. 2 weeks later, a thick envelope arrived in the mail. Matteo was the one who pulled it from the mailbox. When he saw the university logo in the corner, he dropped his backpack and ran full speed up the stairs, yelling, Mommy! Mommy! She tore it open with shaking hands. Inside, a letter. One word bolded in the first sentence. Congratulations. She sat on the couch in stunned silence, blinking at the page as Mateo stood in front of her, hands clenched, waiting to explode. "I got in," she whispered. He screamed. She screamed. They danced again, this time older, taller, stronger, but the joy was just as raw. "I told you, Mummy," Mateo shouted, jumping on the couch cushions. "You're going to be a real lawyer." "No," she said, breathless, hugging him close. "I am a real lawyer. I just haven't graduated yet." At night she walked the old route past the courthouse steps. The street lamp flickered above where her cart used to stand. She ran her fingers over the concrete post near the curb, worn smooth by time. Then she pulled a Sharpie from her pocket and, small and discreet, wrote 2 words, "Started here." And with that, she turned toward the subway, toward the next fight, toward the next chapter. Because Rosa Alvarez wasn't just making her way to law school, she was making history. 3 years later, the courtroom buzzed with low murmurs as the case was called. State of New York versus S. Torres. Rosa stood from the iron defense table in a fitted navy blazer, not borrowed this time, but her own. Her curly hair was pulled back neatly, her court ID badge clipped to her lapel, and a silver pendant hung just under her collarbone, Mateo's graduation gift to her. Across from her, the prosecution shuffled papers, confident, distracted. Rosa had been underestimated like that before. It didn't bother her now. She leaned toward her client, a scared 19-year-old girl who hadn't meant to shoplift, but had panicked when her prepaid card declined. Her face was pale, lips trembling. Rosa rested a hand on her shoulder and whispered, "We'll speak the truth, that's enough." Then she stepped forward and spoke with the calm fire of someone who had once stood on the sidewalk outside these very doors, selling hot dogs to people who thought she couldn't read the labels on her own cart. Now, those same doors opened for her. When the verdict came, case dismissed, record sealed, her client burst into tears. Rosa walked her outside into the afternoon light. The girl hugged her tight, breath shaking with relief. "No one ever fought for me before," she whispered. Rosa smiled, gently letting go. "You fight now. I'll walk beside you." That evening she returned to 147th and Lexington, not to vend, not to protest, but to unveil something. The crowd gathered was small but reverent. Local vendors, law students, Mateo with his phone out, Anna standing beside a city official. Councilwoman Sanders pulled the cloth from the small plaque mounted to the brick. Pillar at the courthouse steps it read, "In honor of Rosa Alvarez Vendor, advocate, attorney." She stood her ground here and taught others to rise. There were cheers, claps, even tears. Some of the older vendors placed marigolds at the base of the post. Rosa didn't speak for long. "I don't need to tell my whole story," she said into the microphone, "because if you're standing here, you already know it. You know what it's like to be told you don't belong. You know what it's like to learn the rules while everyone else is already playing, and you know how much strength it takes just to stay, to show up anyway." She looked around at the crowd, then down at Mateo, now taller than her, smiling wide and proud. "I didn't get here alone, and no one should have to." She paused, placing her palm flat against the plaque's bronze surface. "This corner gave me my voice, and I hope it gives someone else theirs too." Later that night, long after the ceremony, she sat at her desk at home, now transformed into a tidy law office. Framed photos lined the walls, her first case victory, Mateo's graduation, her law school diploma. Above her desk, one thing remained unchanged, a piece of notebook paper yellowed and curled at the corners, the drawing Mateo made years ago. Her pushing a hot dog cart, cape flowing behind. She looked at it, then picked up a pen and underneath it wrote in careful script, "Now I carry the law." And with that, Rosa Alvarez, once the hot dog lady on the courthouse curb, turned to her next file. Because justice, like steam from her old cart, keeps rising, and Rosa, she was never going back down.